Today, Google presented Gemini 3, and alongside it, they presented this AI desktop application called Antigravity. And yes, it can be used for coding, but still, if you're not a programmer, you will be able to find some interesting and valuable features. So let's take a look. So what you're seeing here is Antigravity. They gave me access a couple of weeks before it went public, so it might look a little bit different on your end by the time you download it. And I'm going to be dropping some insider information from Google here and in upcoming videos, so like and subscribe for that. It has two modes, the code editor and the agent manager. The agent manager is where you come if you need to have an agent browse the web and maybe do some research for you. Within the agent manager, there are three main sections: the inbox, the workspaces, and the playground. First, the inbox is where your history of conversations with Gemini will be stored. It can be either back and forth conversations or small tasks that you delegate to Gemini. So for example, here in the Antigravity application, Gemini 3 has the superpower that it can automate your Chrome browser. So for example, you can ask Gemini 3 to make a reservation at a local restaurant, and then Gemini will take a few minutes to go out and do it, but then that conversation will be stored here in the inbox. Now you might notice that there's an option here called pending, and a pending conversation is something that Gemini is actively working on. And here comes the insider tip number one. I know Google is contemplating the idea of integrating other models here, not only Gemini, but today the focus is on Gemini 3. Okay, moving on to the playground. You can ask Gemini, or whichever AI comes later, you can ask them to take on tasks that are more complicated, such as creating a website or creating a series of documents outlining a marketing strategy. So for those type of medium-sized projects, Gemini will create a project here in the playground. This is like in your home lab, where you can prototype and get projects started. Now, if any of those projects really take off and you need to create a lot of code, a lot of images, in other words, if your project starts getting really big, now your project needs to be in the workspaces. When you have something in the workspaces section, that means that it's a big project, maybe a lot of code and a lot of files contained within. Everything that you have here in the workspaces, that means that there is a folder, dedicated folder within your local computer containing all the assets of that big project. So that's what the workspaces are for. Okay, before getting into the technical stuff, let me showcase an example of what you can do here in the Agent Manager. I'm going to use Gemini 3 here, the latest and greatest from Google DeepMind, to reserve a table for 5 people at a local restaurant that I personally love. So make a reservation for 5 people at Pizzeria 900 in Montreal City this Friday at 7 p.m. So with that information, Gemini will use a special Chrome browser that comes pre-installed within the Antigravity app. Gemini will take control of that special Chrome browser to carry out the task that I just gave to it. Now, this is a special Chrome browser because Gemini can inspect the internals of the website, Gemini can take screenshots, and it can also click and drag and scroll just like a human would. So what you're seeing here is a screen split of Antigravity on the left and the Chrome browser on the right. When you see that blue glow, that means Antigravity is controlling the browser, where Gemini is controlling the browser. I'm not interacting with the browser at all. And Gemini had a little bit of a struggle trying to get rid of that cookies pop-up. And after it wasn't able to make reservation through the restaurant's website, it had the great idea of maybe trying to reserve a table through Google Maps. And that's what it ended up doing at the end. Still, it wasn't able to place reservation, and I ended up running out of a quota. This test ran for 15 minutes, but then I changed to Gemini 2.5 Pro, and Gemini 2.5 Pro was able to take where Gemini 3 left off, and it actually finished the reservation. I was able to place a reservation. Okay, let's move on now to the coding capabilities within Antigravity. So for all the projects that you have within the workspaces, you'll have an expandable menu. In In bold, you have the project name, and below it, the coding tasks that you've given Gemini for that specific project. For each of those projects, you have this option to focus the code editor, and now this is more familiar view to, for example, Visual Studio Code or Cursor. Here you can do all your tapped complete or vibe coding. The interesting part here, specifically for web development, is that you can ask Gemini to code something for you. And with the integrated web browser that we just saw a few moments ago, that means Gemini should be able to not only do the coding, but also the testing and the validation that the application looks and behaves how it's supposed to, all within Antigravity itself. So here I ran a quick test by giving Antigravity a link to this website. This is the web to app funnel of a very successful app. I asked Gemini 3 to explore the website, go through the screens step by step, screen by screen, all the way through the funnel. And then the next step, I asked Gemini 3 to replicate this web funnel using Next.js, which is basically React. And finally, I asked it to test the whole implementation and run the project within the integrated browser of Antigravity. Okay, so I hope you're all enjoying Gemini 3 and Antigravity. Feel free to drop a comment and a like if you liked the video, and I'll see you in the next one.